So Tom Lee, one of the world's major analysts, just said that there's 4 major factors that show a huge buy the dip opportunity. Check this out.
Well, I think markets were positively surprised by the Fed's move, in part because recent staff papers from the Fed had argued tariffs would actually be multi-year inflationary effects. So Fed Chair Powell's comments yesterday, I think, did catch a lot of folks by surprise, just because it is a view that markets probably want to hear, that they'd like to hear that the Fed is viewing tariffs as possibly transitory, because that puts them in a position to actually intervene if labor markets start to weaken. And in fact, that's evident in the SEP, because 90% of Fed staffers now see not only risk to growth, the GDP growth forecast, but it was 90% seeing it as downside risk.
Steve, would you agree with that characterization, or how do you think the Fed or Goolsbee or a member like that might respond to the idea that they're still at the ready to support the economy?
They're at the ready to support the economy through keeping rates where they are right now. He kind of took off the table, or never has put on the table, this idea of hiking rates. I think it's a difficult and very interesting dance the Fed has to do here. I think there's an argument, and people I've talked to have supported this, of the Fed talking tough right now about inflation to make sure and play a role in the idea that the tariffs do not become a broader inflationary, have a broader inflationary effect, but then being ready as needed to address the downside. Right now, it seems like because Powell feels like he's restrictive enough to deal with that inflation problem, that all the talk or the leaning here is addressing the potential negative effects of the tariffs, and the idea that they both brought down their growth forecast while they raised the inflation forecast. If this were the Volcker Fed or the Volcker idea, Kelly, you would say that Paul Volcker would be addressing the inflation problem and then get to the growth problem.
Right, and Powell repeatedly says Volcker's the Fed chair that he kind of admires the most.
Yeah.
Granted, the inflation back then was very different than what we're dealing with now. Tom, even as the markets are digesting what Steve said, this kind of lower growth, stickier inflation environment, and not taking it all that well, what are the other positive signs you're seeing for stocks this week?
Well, I think that the sort of the big elephant in the room has been the absolute fear that has become systematic in markets around April 2nd and the tariff deadlines. And I think that there have been little hints this week that instead of April 2nd being the date of some sort of annihilation of trade relationships, that we may start to see either deals before then or even delays in implementation. And I think that really investors are going to breathe a sigh of relief, because, as you can tell, pessimism has become very pervasive because of the fears of what will happen on April 2. So I think that's a positive. And then
Now, yes, guys, there is a potential bottoming happening right here in the stock market because of the fact that we've sold off majorly, right? And we're just getting closer to all that news on April 2nd. So if you guys do want to purchase some stocks while they are down, make sure you guys tap into the Moomoo link down below in the description to get up to 30 free stocks. Okay, this is a brokerage. You can go ahead and buy and sell stocks on. And also, I'm going to dive into the app right now. Okay, I'm going to show you guys what I'm looking at. So I have a watch list, as you can see. You know, I got a few stocks. We got Pounds here. We got Moomoo here. We got Snap, Meta, Netflix. You guys know all of these major stocks that we look to trade every day. Okay, we got also Netflix, Apple, Amazon, Neo, Starbucks, and SPY, right? You got the main indices. You got all these Mag 7 stocks. So let's go ahead and, for example, take a look at Amazon. Okay, I just want to show you guys that it has potentially bottomed. Okay, you're going to see that right here. Okay, I'm going to be using the charts and looking at the moving averages. We got the 200-day moving averages, one of the most major moving averages in the stock market, where major investors, right, billionaires, they love buying when stocks are just on or below the 200-day moving average, because it shows where stocks tend to hang around in the span of 200 days. So guys, take a look at this. Amazon had highs of 242, right? We rose up all the way up here, but then ever since then, the stock's fallen $50. Okay, so that's huge drops on Amazon. And this is a whole 10 to 20% correction that's have been on many other stocks as well. So let me know down below if you guys are buying any of these stocks that have dropped, or if you are waiting for a potential crash. Okay, so I know Warren Buffett is sitting on his stacks of cash, right? You saw Berk B, Berk A is at all-time highs right now. Warren Buffett, you'll see him be so patient. So I'm watching Warren Buffett's cash, right? I'm watching his cash, and also I'm watching the market with all its news. So let me know down below what you guys are currently doing. Let's go ahead and get back into the market news.
The other is, and it's really a technical perspective, but Mark Newton, our head of technical strategy, has pointed out there are increasing signs of that we've actually established a tradable bottom. And that's not only the fact that we declined so quickly, but it's that market breadth has really been expanding and then actually following through in a way that looks like this is not a 10% decline that's leading to a 20%, but a 10% waterfall decline / heart attack for stocks driven by rage selling, and now it's tradable.
So those would be a couple of big positives, kind of technical signs, maybe April 2nd, because I've seen that reporting too, where they're, the White House evidently working with trading partners, trying to get some stuff dialed back before April 2nd and so forth. What else, Tom, do you see that encourages you?
Well, I'd say that probably the final thing that I've seen is, and this is really from our meeting with clients, is that we know there's actually quite a lot of dry powder. Many of our clients have raised a lot of cash. I mean, it's also evident in a lot of the money market balances or prime brokerage de-risking that's taken place. And it's at a time when investor sentiment has moved far more than is justified by the market moves. Whether you look at AAII or Investors Intelligence, both have registered recession-like readings in sentiment. And so it really creates the room for positive surprise. And that, again, I think it like what you just said, if tariff headlines aren't as bearish, and if there's all this last-minute work on negotiating something, and yesterday there was a tweet about how into the night Hessett and Lutnick and Besant were working on a trade deal that got so little notice. I think it just tells me markets could be positively surprised.
And as we show bond yields, 4.24 on the 10-year. I mean, on the margin, Steve, that helps as well. What were you going to say?
I was just going to ask Tom the extent to which economic weakness is built in to the stock market. When he talks about a tradable bottom, Tom, I'm not much of a technical guy, and I leave that all to you and the technical people. I'm more of a fundamental guy. I want to know if we do have a downturn, or if those lower growth GDP numbers come in, is the market set for that given what it has, given the sell-off that we've had?
Steve, there's a difference between a speed bump versus an unraveling of the economic momentum. I think that stocks have discounted a negative March jobs report. I think that there is already enough evidence developing, whether it's on claims or what we know are the known effects in February versus March, that would say we should expect a negative jobs print for March. But I think that that's already been really well socialized, because there's not a single institution I've talked to that thinks jobs momentum is improving in March. I think they all looked at the February number of 150 and think it still could flip negative. But of course, if this is not a growth scare, but we're hitting stall speed, that probably is not discounted. So I think a lot of this has to do with really taking off that fear that has frozen businesses and consumers before April 2nd.
Yeah, fair enough. And I take your point that it has to be just a growth scare and not maybe a more sustained slowdown. We'll leave it there for now. Tom, thanks very much. Appreciate you joining us today. Steve, stick around. By the way, Tom will be...
So everyone, I'm curious to hear your opinions on where the stock market is heading. Okay, do you think it's going up? Do you think it has more room to fall to the downside? Okay, I've been buying this dip massively with all this opportunity given. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take it. But obviously, it still has some room to the downside. Okay, if that does happen, right? If stocks do go to the downside, I'm going to be a buyer, because investing, guys, I really want to build long-term assets that will pay me in the future. Okay, I'm all about discounts. Think of all the stocks falling as a discount, because you can go ahead and purchase them to make more money in the future, as well, as long as you go ahead invest in a great stock. Okay, so make sure you guys are choosing great stocks on this pullback to go ahead and invest in, because that'll treat you well years down the line, even maybe a few months when the whole market recovers. So let me know what you think of Tom Lee, okay, as well as the current market news. I know we are in a downtrend. It's been a month, right? It's been over a month. It feels like forever, but we are on our way soon back up, because history shows time and time again, right? Stocks will go back up. And when they do, okay, I am loving the gains that I'm going to be getting. So I'm not scared of any dip. Any dip I do get is a buying opportunity. So if you guys like this video, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We got more uploads coming in on the way. XRP at 240. I've been loving it. So if you guys like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Check out another video, click right here, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.